Keeping it short.
Test, test. Nope? Yes? All right, good. All right, everybody awake? Seem a little sleepy after lunch. It's that time of the day. Everybody asleep? So I'm going to wake you up, and I'm here to motivate you a little bit, to start up here and start up now. Okay? So a little bit, my background, I was born just a little bit north in Odessa, Ukraine. I was fortunate that my parents brought me to Silicon Valley when I was 8 years old, and I got to grow up in Silicon Valley. Started with startups at the age of 13. So that's what happens. So I feel very fortunate, and now I spend a lot of time around the world helping the next generation of entrepreneurs come up. I run a company called Keen. We have a print marketplace, so all the little things that you hand out all day long, all these things that you wear, all these things you see around you, we're basically the kayak for print in the US, and we'll be launching with a lot of, you'll see news about us very soon. I've also gotten together with a few friends that are very active in Europe, and we're starting a seed fund for Central and Eastern Europe. So you'll hear about that as well next year. So let's just jump right into it. Why here? Why now? There's a lot of people that want to move to Silicon Valley, and they think it's only possible there. You've already heard it from Dave earlier today. You've heard it from a few other people. You just heard it from Aaron as well. Well, I'm here to tell you a little bit about why here, why now. So first of all, from the standpoint of investors, and the reason that we greedy investors are starting a new fund here is because Europe is actually very interesting as a place to start a new fund. There's a lot of advantages. So Europe produces higher venture exit multiples than the US, meaning for every dollar you invest, you can get more back. The European exits are smaller, right? But the entrance valuations are 3 to 4 times lower. Big reason for that is because it's a lot cheaper to start a company here. An apartment in San Francisco costs about at least $3,500 a month to rent. Right? There are parking spots in San Francisco more expensive than houses in Istanbul. That's a big reason, right? It's the startup Olympics. Everything is more expensive. Engineers cost $120,000 a year on average, junior engineers. So Europe produces half as many exits as the US right now. 1/3 of the what's called home run, 100 million plus exits, but on only 1/5 of the money. That's actually very interesting, very attractive, right? And if you look at these big exits, the cash-on-cash multiples in the US, about 4.5x, which is lower than funds promise their investors when they're raising money. They need to get 6x to get the minimum performance that they should be giving. In Europe, that number is much bigger. All right, so Europe is very interesting. This is why you see new funds announced every other week in Europe right now. Right? And they went away after the dot-com bust. There was only 5 or 6 funds that really survived. So there's a lot of new things going on. So you're going to have access to more capital as founders in Europe. It's bound to happen. It's happening. Okay? So why startup? What's a good startup? Right? A lot of people don't know what a good startup is. What is a fucking startup? 1. Right? You can start the count. So a startup is an experiment in search of a business model. Okay? It is not a little version of a big company. And most experiments fail. That's okay, because when they work, it's a breakthrough. So you need to be ready to fail. A lot of cultures around the world have a real stigma with failure, but it's not the same type of failure when you're doing something really risky, because the reward is much bigger. This is what you should start with. Who is the customer and what is the problem? Biggest mistake I see from entrepreneurs outside of Silicon Valley, or actually just in general, is you come up with some technology and then you look for a problem to solve with that. It's a technology looking for a problem to solve. That's usually very painful to turn into a business. You need to flip it upside down. You need to identify a problem and start testing it. You don't have to start coding. You can create a Facebook group and see if there's demand for what you're trying to do. Right? You need to start testing as early as possible. Create experiments as early as possible. Identify a customer with a painful problem. And it has to be a painful problem. It cannot be something that improves somebody's life just a little bit. That's not enough to motivate them. That will not be enough to make your startup grow fast. It needs to be a painkiller. A very obvious difference between how it was before and how it is now. Right? Make it obvious. That means that somebody that doesn't know your industry, it needs to be obvious for them. What you're solving is very valuable. Right? The way you do that is you show evidence. I don't know you, but if you said Gartner or some research firm or somebody identified an interesting market, then that's much more interesting. You also have to take a look at how is this problem currently being solved. Right? The biggest mistake of any startup to come out on stage and say, we have no competitors. Well, congratulations, you probably don't have a business. If nobody's trying to solve this problem right now, it's not a problem. Right? It could be solved in different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be solved in exactly the same way you're doing it. You have to prove that your way is actually an innovation, and you have a big advantage there. So like I said, no competitors, no problem, no market, no business. Right? Don't make this mistake. Now, you have to be able to look at how this problem is currently being solved. Identify, is it hard? Is it expensive? Is it painful? How are you different and better? Not just different for the sake of being different, but different and obviously much better. Generational difference, paradigm shift better. And it has to be a big effing market. Kind of soften that for you. So it has to be a big market because chances are that you'll get maybe a small portion of it. Maybe you become a leader in it, but the odds of you becoming a leader are very, very small, right? So the risk-reward ratio, you have to tackle a really big problem for the risk to be worth it, because then the win might be really big. And it's much easier to grow a big business when you come into an industry that's growing really fast. If you become one of the leaders in an industry and the industry is growing 20% per year, you want to be part of that industry because everything in that industry will naturally grow at that rate. And if you're a leader, you'll actually grow a little bit faster. Right? So this is the concept of selling out. You want to go for the trends. You want to be smart and look where something is going, where the industry is going, and you want to be at the start of that trend. Because that is a big, big effect that you can't underestimate. And very early on, your main ingredient is team. Everybody know who this is? Yes? The A-team. Very, very American reference, a little bit old. So in the A-team, everybody had their own specialty. And your startup team has to be that as well. And it has to consist of 3 things. And somebody already mentioned it this morning. But basically, the most important part is that you have the expertise in that particular problem. How are you going to solve this particular problem better than the next average smart person? You have to have some kind of experience, some kind of insight into that particular problem, more than somebody that's just next to you that went to the same school and is just as smart and is just as hardworking. Engineering is obviously very important as well. And it can't be a couple of guys that come out of a business school with PowerPoint and say, well, we're just going to get somebody else to build it for us. Guess what? If you're a software company, your core competency is to build software quickly and efficiently. You might be able to get away with somebody building a prototype for you at the beginning, but once you get that out, you are a software company. You need to be able to execute software. And design. Design is very important. You have very little time to get somebody's attention, your customer, be it business or consumer, and they don't care what database you use, what technology you use. They care about the experience. So you have to design the experience first, and then backfill the engineering. Don't do it in reverse. Of course, I'm also a designer, so I'm very biased. And you ultimately have to have an unfair advantage. It's usually your team early on, right? And I'll give you a hint. The advantage here is not being light, it's about being strong. You guys are a very, very sleepy audience. So looking forward, I'll leave you with 3 things as entrepreneurs in a particular region, in a particular ecosystem. First of all, this is my opinion, is that you have to win your home market first. Use your home market as a laboratory. You know the culture here. You have a personal support network here. Creating startups is very, very hard, right? So you need that personal support network. Do not discount that, because 6 months into it, you will find out what depression really is when things don't go right. And you're going to need your family and friends to help you out, right? Win that home market first, then go to the next market. Don't rush off to the Startup Olympics in Silicon Valley. Number 2, very quickly, you're going to have some inside knowledge, and you're going to go through some battles and experiences. It's your chance to start giving back. It feels good to become a mentor, to help, and kind of build that community. Without that, there's no ecosystem. There's no kind of open source knowledge. And the third thing is you need to help build that ecosystem. I'll post a link to these slides, but basically Startup Weekend did a great white paper on what it takes to build an ecosystem. It's a combination of government and talent and density and culture and, of course, capital. All those things. So I'll leave you with that. And if you'd like the slides, I'll post them on Twitter. Quick quote: do it now. Don't wait for anything. If you work in a big company and you keep thinking that I'm going to do a startup one day, get out of the comfort zone. Quit your job. Go start that business. Because if you don't believe in yourself, investors certainly won't. Okay? And one last thing. I'll leave you a present. Some of my knowledge, some of the things that I've learned in the last 15 years of startups. I'll be publishing a book next year, so now you can grab an intro chapter on it today. So thank you very much. I'll be around if you have any questions. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Vitaly. Especially thank you for the nice gift at the end.